tonight. 2 people killed when a high-performance sports car.
Porsche Carrera GT.
A Porsche Carrera GT.
One person died at the scene.
So difficult to handle, even professional drivers called it scary. Both men pronounced dead on the scene.
Are you afraid of this car?
Cars are inherently dangerous. Heavy machines capable of high speeds, reliant on human competence and a delicate synergy of mechanical parts to prevent disaster. The risks must always be respected. But when do we draw the line? When does a car go beyond being merely dangerous and becoming outright deadly? In 2003, Porsche released a car so extreme, it tested even the limits of professional racing drivers. Few vehicles have stirred up as much controversy as the Porsche Carrera GT. Since its release, Porsche have faced intense scrutiny and multiple lawsuits from the families of those who have lost their lives behind the wheel, and even from owners who found themselves afraid of their own cars. With just 1,270 Carrera GTs ever built, and an alleged 200 of them already written off, the numbers alone paint a chilling picture. The name Carrera GT didn't just become legendary, it became a warning. Yet many argue that the Carrera GT isn't a cold-hearted killer, but a misunderstood machine that demands skill and respect. In this video, we'll explore what made the Carrera GT so infamous yet so desirable, and attempt to answer the question, was the Carrera GT truly a killer? It's the first car in my life that I drive, and I feel scared. That's what Walter Roll, a world rally champion and official Porsche test driver, told Drive magazine before the Carrera GT's launch in 2003. The concept had first been unveiled at the 2000 Paris Motor Show, but production was delayed. The reason? Roll told Porsche engineers that in its current form, the car was simply too much for the average driver to handle. "I came back into the pits and I was white," Roll admitted, recalling a particularly harrowing lap on a rain-soaked track. Hearing this from a seasoned Porsche test driver is striking. On the surface, this isn't something you'd expect any manufacturer to want their drivers saying publicly. Why would Porsche, expecting customers to spend more than the price of a house, willingly market a car that was intimidating, difficult to drive, and even terrifying? As strange as it sounds, this approach made perfect sense. The Carrera GT wasn't designed to be a status symbol. It was a raw, visceral experience, a car built for true enthusiasts. Many car lovers are drawn to the vehicles that present a challenge. A car with a dangerous reputation is an opportunity, a way to prove to ourselves and others that we have the skill to master it. I touched upon this idea in a previous video about the Toyota MR2, another car known for its unforgiving handling. Cars like this aren't desirable to the average commuter, but for enthusiasts, it's the opposite. Porsche knew this all too well. Decades earlier, the 930 Turbo earned its nickname the Widowmaker due to its brutal power delivery and snap oversteer. Yet today, it's one of the most sought-after classic Porsches. In some ways, car enthusiasts are like horror movie fans. The scarier the better, within reason of course. But unlike a horror film, where the fear is safely confined to the screen, the danger of the Carrera GT was all too real. It wasn't just a car with a fearsome reputation, it had the engineering to back it up. On paper, the Carrera GT's numbers aren't outrageous by today's standards. It left the factory with 603 horsepower and a curb weight of 1,380 kilos. That's impressive, but today, even a high-performance sedan built for the school run makes similar power. So what made the Carrera GT so unforgiving? For one, it did have traction control, contrary to popular belief, but it was a fairly primitive system. More importantly, it lacked electronic stability control altogether. That alone was a recipe for disaster. Then there was the mid-engine layout. While this design is associated with improved handling, it requires a skilled driver to extract its benefits. Mid-engine cars tend to rotate around their center due to their weight distribution. In the right hands, this means a sharp turn-in and incredible agility. However, in the hands of an inexperienced driver, it's a different story. Imagine approaching a corner too fast. Your instinct might be to lift off the throttle to scrub off some speed. In most cars, this can shift the weight forward and help rotate the car. But in a mid-engined, rear-wheel drive car like the Carrera GT, that sudden load shift unloads the rear tyres far more aggressively. Without stability control to keep it in check, the car can quickly snap into oversteer. In a front-wheel drive car, or any car for that matter, lift-off oversteer can still occur, but counteracting is often more forgiving. In the Carrera GT, however, once the rear end steps out, recovering requires precise countersteering and throttle modulation, something that even experienced drivers can struggle with. So yes, mid-engine cars can be razor sharp, but only if you know how to handle them. The Carrera GT wasn't just a car, it was a test of skill, and for many, it proved to be an unforgiving one. Things got even worse for Porsche in November of 2013.
New details this morning on the deaths of Fast and Furious star Paul Walker and his friend killed in a fiery car accident over the weekend.
Beloved actor and charity founder Paul Walker was killed while riding as passenger in a red Carrera GT, driven by his close friend, Roger Rodas. Rodas was a seasoned track driver, but he lost control of the car at high speed, colliding with a tree. The car burst into flames, killing both of them on the scene. Paul's daughter, Meadow, later filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche in 2015, claiming the car was responsible for her father's death. However, the lawsuit was settled privately, and the final conclusion remained confidential. A highly experienced driver losing control of a Carrera GT only fueled its reputation as a dangerously unforgiving car. But, as tragic as this incident was, it cannot be discussed without acknowledging some key facts. Investigations estimated that the car was travelling in excess of 90 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. Additionally, it was still fitted with its original 7-year-old tyres, which despite only having 3,500 miles on them, had long since aged beyond safe usability. Tyre rubber degrades over time, making them unsafe even if the tread depth is sufficient. With such old tyres and excessive speed, a crash was almost inevitable, regardless of the car's design. For these reasons, while the accident was undeniably devastating, it would be unfair to place the sole blame on the Carrera GT. In 2005, 2 men were killed in the Carrera GT during a track event. A lawsuit followed, but in this case, the blame largely fell on the track day organisers and the driver of a Ferrari, who was believed to have contributed to the accident. Even so, the crash did ignite debates over whether Porsche should or shouldn't have equipped the Carrera GT with electronic stability control. More recently, another Carrera GT made the headlines in another incident, though this time, no one was killed. The car in question was a Gembala Mirage GT, a highly modified version of the Carrera GT. The driver was allegedly speeding while intoxicated, resulting in a spectacular crash in New York City. However, because the Gembala is a highly altered version of the original car, this incident does little to prove that the Carrera GT itself is inherently dangerous. This was clearly a case of reckless driver behaviour. It's estimated that more than a dozen people have lost their lives in Carrera GT crashes, a concerning number when you consider that only 1,270 units were ever built. Unlike a mass-produced sports car, many of these hypercars spend most of their life in garages, rather than being driven regularly, which makes the number of crashes even more alarming. This raises the question, was the Carrera GT really a killer? The answer isn't black and white. Yes, it has been involved in fatal incidents, but hasn't every performance car? The real issue lies in accessibility. This was a race car for the street, demanding immense skill and optimal conditions to drive safely, even at moderate speeds. In theory, you could argue that if every owner always obeyed the speed limit, the dangers would be minimised. But automakers know their cars will be pushed to the limits, whether on public roads or on a track. Every single car exists on a spectrum, some with more driver aids and some with fewer. But where do we draw the line between an exhilarating challenge and an unacceptable level of risk? Did the Carrera GT cross that line? Given Porsche's history with the Widowmaker 930 Turbo, should they have been more cautious ensuring drivers weren't solely responsible for managing the car's risks? Or is the responsibility entirely on the driver to respect the machine and their own limits? The answer is murky. It depends on how much blame you assign to the manufacturer for selling such an extreme car versus the owners for how they choose to drive it. But one thing is clear, the Carrera GT commands respect. It's a machine that doesn't forgive mistakes, and whether you see it as a true killer or an unfairly maligned masterpiece, its reputation as one of the most fearsome road cars ever built was well deserved.